A coal miner's widow named Ada Boone buried her husband on a Tuesday in 1936 and lit the stove herself on Wednesday. Her boy Wesley was 11. The mine paid her nothing. She had a cast-iron box stove. 40 acres of second-growth hickory in Harlan County, Kentucky, and a stack of quilts. That winter, outside, temperatures fell to 11 below. Their neighbor, a bookkeeper who had switched to a new oil-burning furnace in 1934, ran out of fuel in January and moved his family in with kin. Ada Boone did not run out of anything. She banked her fire at 10 every night, rose at 5, and fed the coals a single split of hickory. Her monthly heating cost in 1936 was $0, not low, 0. Today, most Americans couldn't heat one room for one night without a wire in the wall or a truck rolling up the driveway. But here's the twist. The record now says Ada Boone's cast iron box banked right put out more usable heat per pound of wood than the oil furnace her neighbor bought on credit. The government spent 50 years telling you that furnace was progress. It wasn't. It was a bill. What happened to Wesley Boone and to 24 other things your grandparents did to make winter free is what we're counting down. Before we go on, there's something coming for this country, and the news won't say a word about it till it's already on your doorstep. It comes down to one number: 3 days. That's what the stores hold for you. Your grandfather's pantry held a winter, and the difference was never money. It was knowing. 94 pages of that knowing in one book. Water, fire, curing, canning, the plants that heal and the ones that kill. I am a 7th-generation resident of the eastern Kentucky hills. My people settled this ground in the 1790s, and nobody's left since. Near everything I'm about to count down. My grandfather Eli copied into a leather journal before he passed at 94, and he made me swear the old ways wouldn't die with me. This is me keeping my word. Some of what I'm about to lay out was quietly written out of building code. Some of it, a university confirmed last decade, works better than the equipment you're paying a note on. 25 ways to heat a house with no wire. No meter. No monthly bill. We start at 25 and end on the one that contains all the others. The real question isn't what we lost. It's who got paid when we forgot and how you take it back this winter. The Ashdam draft choked. Your great-grandmother, before she climbed the stairs at night, raked the live coals into a tight pile at the back of the firebox and shoveled cold gray ash straight over half of them. Not to smother, to starve. A 1/4-inch dam of ash cut the airflow. So the coals held red till morning without eating fuel. She used maybe 8 ounces of ash. Cost her nothing but a scoop. This wasn't outlawed. It was untaught quietly when the thermostat furnace arrived in the 1950s and Sears started running ads that called overnight tending backwards. A 2018 University of Tennessee Wood Heat Bulletin confirms that a properly banked stove holds combustible coals 8 to 12 hours. 8 hours of warmth. 1 scoop of ash. Never a bill. That one, they only stopped teaching. The next one, they stopped teaching and stopped stocking. Layered wool wall curtains, nail-hung. Depression-era farm wives on the Cumberland Plateau nailed heavy wool blankets doubled across the north wall of the house from October through March. Just nails. Just wool. 2 blankets stop drafts. A modern fiberglass bat still lets through because the wool traps a still air layer against the log. A wool Army surplus blanket in 1938 cost 90 cents. A modern R13 wall cavity retrofit runs 3 balls. $1 minimum for the same room. Wool wasn't banned. It was made to feel poor. The American Gas Association ran national ad campaigns through the 1930s to 1950s, telling you the static convenience was modern and wool was grandmother's fix. The 2016 American Society of Heating, Refrigerating, and Air Conditioning Engineer's Handbook lists wool's thermal resistance at R3, 5 per inch, roughly identical to fiberglass. She was right. They just made her feel poor for being right. The cast iron box stove. Benjamin Franklin drew his Pennsylvania fireplace in 1742. Iron box. Internal baffles. Radiant surface on all 6 sides. A frontier family in 1850 could buy one for $5, install it themselves, and cut their wood use by more than half compared to the open hearth they'd been feeding. The open hearth throws 80% of its heat straight up the chimney. The 1910 United States Department of Agriculture Farmers Bulletin said so on the record. Franklin's box drops that loss to under 40. Then starting around 1895, Lennox, and later Carrier, began selling forced air central furnaces and lobbying builders and lenders to install them as standard. By 1955, the freestanding iron stove was called old-fashioned in every appliance ad in Life magazine. The Environmental Protection Agency's 1988 Phase 1 wood stove emissions rule and the 1990 Phase 2 rule ironically brought the iron box back. A modern certified stove is 50% more efficient than an open fireplace. A new one runs $2,400. A used one on Marketplace, $200. The math has never changed. The soapstone heat battery. Eli wrote about soapstone in the journal, dated November of 56ers. 10 lb block heated on the stove for an hour. Wrapped in a wool sock, slid under the quilts at the foot of the bed. It radiated gentle warmth till dawn. The 1905 Sears catalog sold soapstone foot warmers for $1. Test. General Electric patented the first residential electric blanket in 1927 and mass-marketed it starting in 1946 for $8 plus $14 a month in the electric bill forever. A soapstone block paid once works for 100 years and never fails in a power outage. Soapstone has a specific heat of 980 joules per kilogram. Kelvin, nearly 20% higher than brick. Modern high-end wood stoves still line their fireboxes with it because the physics never lost. Copper and tin reflector screens. Behind the open hearth before central heating, a pioneer family in Ohio in 1855 hung a curved sheet of polished tin or hammered copper. It caught the radiant heat the fire threw at the back wall and bounced it forward into the room. That 1910 Department of Agriculture bulletin I mentioned recommended reflector screens as the single cheapest improvement a homeowner could make. Cost in 1910 was 15 cents of sheet tin. No one banned reflectors. They just stopped being sold when fireplaces stopped being primary heat. Modern emergency blankets, Mylar space blankets, and the reflective panel behind every radiator in every European apartment building work on the exact principle. A $12 sheet of aluminum flashing behind your wood stove tonight standing away from the wall will push measurable degrees back into the room. The thermal mass rock bench. Around the cast iron stove. A farmer in Vermont in 1890 built a knee-high bench of stacked dry stone. Not mortared, just fitted. The stove ran hot from 6 to 9 00p, mem, and heated the bench through from 9 00p to 6. No fire. The bench radiated heat back into the room. The stones cost him nothing. He hauled them out of the field he was already clearing. Standard Oil started home heating oil delivery under the Esso brand in the 1940s and spent 20 years advertising thermostatic convenience over primitive mass heat. I built one of these when I was 14 out on the ridge, and I used wet river rock because I didn't know better. Third fire cracked 2 stones clean in half and shot a chip across the room. Any dry, dense stoneworks. Wet river rock will hurt you. The hearth top cooking iron as heat multiplier. The cast iron cookware sitting on your grandmother's stove all day wasn't just for supper. A 12-inch skillet, a Dutch oven, and a kettle on the stovetop added roughly 40 lbs of iron to the radiating surface. That iron absorbed heat when the fire was hot and gave it back when the fire dropped. She never took the kettle off. Ever. The 1910 Department of Agriculture Bulletin again notes the utility of surface iron as a continuous radiator. Cast iron cookware wasn't outlawed. It was called heavy and hard to clean by the 1972 Teflon marketing campaigns run by DuPont, and 40 pounds of iron disappeared from the average American stovetop. A used Lodge skillet cost $18. It'll outlive your grandchildren. Set it on the stove and leave it. The chimney wall heat wrap. In the 2-story Appalachian farmhouse my grandfather grew up in, the chimney ran up the interior wall, not the exterior. Every builder in America from 1920 forward put the chimney on the outside wall because it was cheaper to frame. An interior chimney of stone or brick captures every degree of exiting flue heat and radiates it into the second-floor bedroom directly above the firebox. An exterior chimney throws that heat outside. Nobody banned the interior chimney. National framing standards and the balloon frame construction method, standardized by the 1921 National Building Code, pushed chimneys out to the wall to save on cross-bracing. A single stone chimney inside the house heats a bedroom 8 to 12 degrees warmer than one against the siding. Banking fires the right way safely. I told you about the ash dam at 25. This one is the full banking. Split a green 10-in hardwood round oak, hickory, black locust, and lay it bark down over the raked coals. Greenwood because it burns slow. Bark down because bark seals the coal bed. Close the primary draft to just above shut. Not fully shut. Never fully shut a stove. Fully shut a stove and you get creosote in the flue and carbon monoxide in the house. A cracked open draft, a green round, and a proper flue keep you warm and keep you breathing. Eli lost a cousin in 31 who forgot the second half. Do it right and you wake to red coals in a house at 62 degrees. Do it wrong and you don't wake at all. The musket barrel convector. Wild West cabin accounts, well documented, in Montana and Wyoming from the 1870s, describe settlers taking a spent musket barrel, or a length of wagon axle pipe, running one end near the stove and the other into a cold corner, and warming that corner by conduction and slow air convection. It worked. Home insurance company underwriters in the 1950s wrote clearance codes that made unlisted pipe near a stove uninsurable, and the practice ended. The modern legal descendant is a properly installed heat shield duct on a wood stove sold by every stove company for $400. Same physics. Different price. I show you this one so you know the principle. Not so, you shove a gun barrel in a stove. Don't do it. Curtain zoning the winter wall. A farm family in Kentucky in the 1930s did not heat 6 rooms. They heated one from November 1st through March 15th. My great-grandmother hung a heavy quilt across the doorway between the kitchen and everything else. And the family lived in the kitchen, slept there some nights. The 1978 National Energy Conservation Policy Act briefly re-endorsed zone heating during the oil crisis, then quietly stopped once natural gas got cheap again. American Gas Association ad campaigns in the 1980s pushed whole house heating as the American standard. Hanging a heavy curtain across a doorway tonight will cut the volume you're heating by half. Half the volume, half the fuel. That's not a theory. It's arithmetic. Snowbanking piled against the north wall. I know how this sounds. Pile snow against the wall of your house. But the University of Alaska Fairbanks Cooperative Extension has published since the 1970s that packed snow carries an R value of roughly R1 per inch. 2 feet of packed snow against a north wall is R24, better than most modern insulated walls. Inuit knew this. Homesteaders in Minnesota knew this. Nobody banned snow. The 1935 Rural Electrification Act meant nobody needed to know it anymore. If you live where it snows and you have an outbuilding, shetna, or cabin, shovel the north drift up against the wall next storm and measure the interior yourself. It works. Watch for meltwater at the seal. That's the only rule. Communal sleeping and layered bedding. A family of 5 sharing one bed under 6 wool blankets generates about 500 watts of continuous heat. That's the American Society of Heating, Refrigerating, and Air Conditioning Engineers figure for a resting adult. 100 watts each. 500 watts is a small space heater running all night, powered by the food you already ate. Frontier and Depression families slept together not for warmth in a metaphorical sense, but literally thermodynamically. Mattress manufacturers and the post-war suburban master bedroom per child ideal made this feel primitive by 1960. It isn't primitive, it's efficient. But an emergency cot dragged into the living room during a power outage with a family under one pile of blankets is not desperation. It's the oldest heat source we have. The south-facing window managed. A cabin sited with its main window facing due south in northern latitudes catches the low winter sun from 10 odd centimeters. There the are what top trick. There M. The Department of Energy's 2022 passive solar guidelines say properly oriented glazing can offset 20 to 30% of heating load. 20 to 30% for nothing. Frontier builders knew this by instinct. Post-war subdivisions ignored it because a developer sites houses for the street, not for the sun. Sears Roebuck started selling electric baseboard heaters through the 1930s. Catalog and orientation stopped mattering because a wire could fix any mistake. Open your south-facing curtains at 10. Lurium. Close them at 3. 0 before the sun drops. Close every other curtain in the house at dusk. That single habit is measurable. Passive solar thermal mass floor. The 1973 OPEC oil embargo made passive solar briefly fashionable again, and a wave of experimental homes went up between 1974 and 1982, with dark tile or brick floors sided under south-facing glass. The floor absorbed sunlight all day and radiated at night. Then oil got cheap in 1986, and the whole movement died in the marketing. Department of Energy data from those experimental homes showed 12 to 20% annual heat savings verified. You can't retrofit a slab floor easily, but a heavy, dark rug over a tile entryway in a south-facing room warmed all day by sun gives back real heat at dusk. Small effect, real effect. Free. Every day the sun comes up. Suding. Cob. And earthen wall retrofits. Great Plains sod houses in the 1880s had walls 2 feet thick made of stacked prairie sod, and they held 60-degree interior temperatures on windy Kansas nights, when the flimsy wood shanty next door hit 20. Weyerhaeuser and the national lumber industry from 1890 forward sold cheap dimensional framing on freight cars and made framed housing the American default. Sod became a joke. Modern rammed earth and cob construction show interior wall R values equivalent to R30 when properly done better than most modern homes. You can't build a sod house under current code, but a cob bench inside your house against an interior wall, 500 olive of clay. Sand. and straw is a thermal mass battery any homeowner can add in a weekend for $80 in materials. Heated brick foot warmers and bed warmers. A flat brick heated on the stove for 40 minutes, wrapped in newspaper and then a wool cloth, slid into the foot of the bed 20 minutes before you climb in. Warms the sheets to 72 degrees. Eli did this every night of his life. The journal notes it dated January of 58. Brick to the foot. Sock to the ankle. Leap. A brick cost $1. General Electric's residential electric blanket still cost $80 and still fails in a power outage. The brick doesn't fail. It's a brick. Wrap it in enough layers that you cannot burn yourself and never put it against bare skin. Wool layered clothing and the long union suit. Silk against skin. Wool over silk. Canvas over wool. That's the frontier stack documented in 100 Montana and Wyoming homesteader accounts. Silk wicks moisture away from the body. Wool insulates when wet. Canvas breaks the wind. Modern outdoor technical clothing rediscovered this exact stack around 2005 and charges $400 for it. A wool army surplus base layer runs $30. Cotton, which every American wears indoors in winter, is the one fiber our grandparents avoided in cold. It holds water against the skin and steals heat. Cotton is not clothing for a cold house. Wool is. That change costs nothing but the switch. The kitchen stove is house heater before central heat. The cook stove ran from 4 to 9. Letter P. Every day of the year. It cooked 3 meals, heated wash water, and warmed the entire ground floor as a side effect. American Gas Association marketing after 1918 successfully sold you a specialized gas cooker that heats a saucepan and nothing else. Fine for July. Terrible for January. A wood-fired or propane cook stove run through the day provides real house heat as a byproduct of every meal. In our house on the ridge from October to April. The kitchen is the warmest room and no separate heater ever runs. 50% of the heat free as a side effect of dinner. That's not a hack. That's how a house used to work. The indoor Cachalofen style bench. This is the one they wrote laws against. In 1975, after several house fires traced to homemade tile-covered stoves, 3 states, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and New Jersey passed statutes requiring underwriters' laboratories listing on any masonry heating device inside a residence. Homemade fireboxes really did burn houses down, but the effect was to end the American DIY Cachalofen, the German tile-covered bench-height masonry stove that heats a house for 18 hours on one loading. A permitted listed masonry heater today costs $15 to $30. R0 installed. In Germany, homeowners still build them themselves for raw in materials. If you're in a state that allows an owner-built unit or you're on rural land with no permit inspector, a masonry bench heater around your existing wood stove following the Masonry Heater Association of North America plans is legal. Safe, and pays for itself in one winter. The rocket mass heater principle. Before we get to the thumbnail item, understand the physics. A rocket mass heater burns a small vertical fire so completely that the exhaust exits at nearly room temperature. The trick is a J-shaped burn tunnel and a long horizontal exhaust that runs under a cob bench, dumping every remaining thermal unit into thermal mass on the way out. It uses 90% less wood than an open fire and 80% less than a standard wood stove. It cannot be sold as a certified appliance because it's built site-specific. That is exactly why the appliance industry has no interest in it. You can't sell what a man can build himself. The pellet-fed rocket heater. This is what the picture showed you. A metal cylinder. A 20-gallon steel drum works with a gasifier column running down the center, glowing red at the coils. A cast iron pot on top, ringed with river stones, cleaned and dried for cooking and for radiant mass. And in the cutaway, wood pellets. Wood pellets you can scoop in bulk from any sawmill or feed store for $230 a ton. That's a full winter's heat delivered on a pallet for less than 1 month of propane. The whole build costs under $108 in materials. The Aprovecho Research Center in Oregon tested pellet-fed rocket units in 2014 and documented 92% combustion efficiency. A permitted propane furnace hits 86 on its best day. Build it outside first. Learn it. Then, a properly vented indoor install per your local code gives you red coils. Hot pot. Stones ringed around. Wood pellets in the hopper. No wire in the wall. The central core labyrinth flue masonry heater. Between 2009 and 2011, the Smithsonian's Material Culture Division cataloged 61 surviving central core masonry heaters across Pennsylvania, Ohio, and West Virginia. Most built by German immigrant masons between 1830 and 1880. The design is a fireplace built into the center of the house, not against an exterior wall, with a labyrinth of flue channels. Sometimes 20 ftbo of stone passage that force hot exhaust gases to give up their heat to the stone core before exiting the roof. One fire in the morning, 18 hours of radiant warmth from the stone. Same wood, different geometry. Modern masonry heaters certified by the Masonry Heater Association of North America hit 80 to 90% combustion efficiency. The right wood seasoned right. Every item above depends on this one. Greenwood is wet wood, and wet wood is smoke, and smoke is wasted heat and chimney fire waiting to happen. A cord of oak. Hickory. Black locust. Or Osage orange. Split in March and stacked under a roof through summer. Holds moisture under 20% by November and delivers 24 million thermal units per cord. Softwood. Pine. Poplar. Cottonwood holds 15 to 17. Penn State Extension's 2019 firewood thermal unit chart says so plainly. In 1900, a cord of oak delivered costs $3 to $5. A cord in 2024 runs $350 to $450. But standing on your own land or bought as logs and split by hand, that same cord runs $40 in gasoline. The species matters. The seasoning matters more. Sovereignty. Number one isn't another heater. It's the thing every one of these 24 was pointing at. Ada Boone up in Harlan County in 1936 didn't have 25 separate systems. She had one system, owning her own heat. She cut her own wood off her own 40 acres, banked her own fire with her own hand, and owed no man, no company, no meter, and no truck a single dollar to stay warm through 11 below January. Her neighbor, the bookkeeper, had one system. 2, he had a note on an oil furnace, a contract with a fuel oil man, and a checkbook that couldn't cover January. Security isn't what you buy. It's what you own free and clear. Wesley Boone grew up, worked 40 years in a Kentucky machine shop, buried his mother in 1971 at 96 years old on the same 40 acres, and lived in that house heat bill free his entire adult life. Owning the means of your own warmth, your own water, your own food, your own light. The utility company hopes you forget it's possible. The gas company hopes you forget your grandmother did it. The government has no policy against you doing it. They just built a whole century of infrastructure that makes forgetting easier than remembering. You don't have to build all 24. Build one. And you are from that day 1 degree more sovereign than the man next door with a note on the furnace. Check your permits. Vent your stoves. Never seal a firebox shut? This week, pick one, just one. Hang a heavy wool blanket across the north wall of your bedroom before Sunday. Or split and stack a face cord of oak right now so it seasons by next November. Or set a clean, dense stone on your wood stove tonight. Wrap it in a towel at bedtime and sleep with your feet on it. Or price out the parts for the pellet rocket heater and build it in the yard this weekend. Tell me down below, did your grandparents heat with wood, with coal, or with something stranger than either? Your grandmother knew every one of these. Somebody just didn't get the chance to pass them down. Now they're yours again. Don't let it die with you. If this story changes the way you look at the cold months ahead, please subscribe and like this channel. We are uncovering the history and the skills they tried to bury. Plant the seeds of your own independence. The next treasure of forgotten knowledge will be opened soon.